Welcome to a special edition of Legal AF. The Block Blanche movement is gaining a head of steam. And at the front of the line, leading the charge, of course, are the Epstein survivors. Because who else can embody all the things that are wrong and corrupt about the Department of Justice and Todd Blanche than the Epstein survivors and how they were treated? We have the opportunity to see the rebuttal, if you will, to Todd Blanche's testimony being provided by Dani Bensky, who's been on the show with us before. And Dani Bensky also met with Todd Blanche, a begrudging, patronizing, put upon Todd Blanche, who met with the Epstein survivors, I guess, to check a box to try to gain a vote, but for no other good reason. And when I saw that Dani was part of that group that met with Todd Blanche the second day of his confirmation hearing or that night, and knowing Dani Bensky, I said, you know what? I think we need some briefing for our audience about what went down. And that got reinforced when I read the 441-page response of Todd Blanche and his team, his handlers, to questions being asked about meetings involving the Epstein survivors. And I'm not sure he was telling the truth in his responses to people like Chuck Grassley. And I want to put some of it through a lie detector test in the form of Dani Bensky. That and reporting that's not getting enough coverage, which is the admission that the FBI has training videos that they use to train human beings to not only do the redactions about the Epstein files, but also to flag Donald Trump's name. Something that when Todd Blanche was asked about it, he seemed to have convenient amnesia. Let's bring in Dani Bensky. Hi, Dani.
Hi, how are you, Michael? Thank you for having me.
I'm doing great. We're so proud of everything that you do in representing your own authentic truth about being a victim of Jeffrey Epstein. And also on behalf of the Epstein survivors, I was not surprised that you were chosen to be the one to do what I call the rebuttal to Todd Blanche, and for good reason. And before we kick it off live here, I do want our audience to be reminded about what sort of it was a nice long speech and appropriate. Well, I'm going to take a couple of clips so people understand what this is all about. And that led, frankly, that so resonated in the room that even Republicans said, we got an Epstein problem in Todd Blanche. It's got to be fixed. Yeah. Let's play Dani Bensky at the Senate Judiciary Confirmation hearing for Todd Blanche.
His actions have destroyed survivors' trust. According to public reporting, Mr. Blanche spent approximately 9 hours meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell. He did not even spend 9 minutes meeting with the survivor. Afterward, Maxwell was transferred to what many have described as a summer camp prison. We learned all of this through the news. Imagine what that feels like as a survivor to sit there if you were exploited by Ghislaine Maxwell and you're hearing this for the first time with no explanation, no outreach, and no transparency from your. And to add insult to injury, the information that Todd Blanche gathered in the White House Situation Room last summer to curb the political fallout from the Epstein files was absolutely abhorrent. Instead of following investigative leads, our government treated and continued to treat this as a political crisis that needs to be managed. In our nation, everyone deserves equal protection under the law. Todd Blanche has been unwilling to protect Epstein survivors' personal information. And he has been resistant to investigate the people who helped Epstein and Maxwell commit those crimes. We need an attorney general committed to ensuring that everyone who facilitated Epstein's crimes is held accountable. Please, I implore you. Please.
Okay, Dani. I mean, not a dry eye in the house, I assure you, in our audience. And thank you again for having the bravery and the courage to do that. Let's start there. Why did you want to be in the room and speaking directly to the members of the Senate Confirmation Committee about Todd Blanche?
Yeah, I think it's hugely important for survivors to be in front of the Senate, in front of congressional leaders, and in front of the DOJ, because it is a very human story. And at the end of the day, it is about humans' rights and about victims' rights. And it's not about this political weaponization. And we face that so much of the time. We've heard so many times from the president, these young women, these girls are a Democratic hoax, or these women are a Democratic hoax, and that there's nothing to see, nothing to look at, all of those things that are so demoralizing. And from our own DOJ, when Pam Bondi wouldn't turn around, right? All of these things that really make us feel like we're not human. And also, I think the senators and congressional reps, like they need us in the room. They need us to be able to share these really authentic stories to understand the importance and the weight of this sex trafficking ring.
I don't know where you were in the room or where Todd Blanche was in the room during but could you see Todd Blanche at all, and how this was he wasn't even there.
He didn't. Yeah, he was not there.
That says it all, I think, Dani, the fact that he wasn't even there to hear your story directly. I think that says it all. What do you think the impact on the room was? Whether it was, you had multiple levels of audience for this: history, fellow survivors, the American people, the elected officials and staff. What do you think the impact on the room was?
I'm hoping that people understood the weight of this story, because a lot of the time, I think we're desensitized in a way to the Epstein story because we've heard it so many times. But as I like to say, there are two crimes here. The first crime is the crime of Jeffrey Epstein and the sex trafficking ring. And the second one is of the DOJ. And I think we needed to get that story in front of the DOJ. And I think that it resonated with a lot of people. And I think that there was an understanding of that they're separate, that there are two separate things. And I mean, just to feel, we always come back to the survivor sisterhood. And I was so nervous, to be honest. I had never been that nervous ever in my life. I used to be terrified of public speaking. It was not my thing. I was a dancer for a reason, just didn't want to get up there at all. And
you would never know it, Dani, by the way.
Well, now I think, thank you. I've learned. But a huge component of this is just making sure that you're doing justice to other survivors and doing justice to, the Epstein survivors in the room, and just feeling their energy that morning and having them sit behind me. And it was like, I could feel this kind of force, and all of my nerves were channeled in a weird way, because I could feel Sky and Amanda are so powerful. When you meet them, they have this very calming, this is Virginia Giuffre's family, right? Very calming, but also you got to go fight. You just got to put one foot in front of the other and you just got to do it. And to have the other survivor sisters there as well, who have huge voices like Liz Stein, like Jess Michaels, right? These voices are incredible voices. And so I just felt really empowered sitting down, and I'm hoping that was conveyed. But these are all really personal stories. And I will say, right now, I'm literally in the lobby of a theater, and I'm doing my other life, which is I'm a choreographer. And I had just flown from this program that I was working at straight to this testimony, and to go from really working with kids that age and understanding who I was at that age, and thinking about my former self and thinking about the person that I really could have been. And then to feel this level of re-victimization over and over again, that you kind of can't get out of, right? It just felt like the stakes were so much higher this time. And I think people felt that. I felt that from quite a few, except for Representative Katie Britt had an interesting, Congress Senator Katie Britt had sort of an interesting pushback from me. And I had been worried about feeling like I was being cross-examined. And there was a little bit of a moment there with Katie Britt where I was sort of where is she going with this? And that felt a little bit tentative.
Yeah.
In general, I felt really, even on the Republican side, we were seeing, they're seeing survivors more. And I just would urge Tom Tillis and Senator Cornyn to really consider everything before voting.
Were you surprised by Tillis's sort of, just to finish?
I had ruled him out. Yeah, I had completely ruled him out.
So Tillis, for our audience sake, Tillis comes out, whether it was choreographed or not, with, I'm not comfortable with voting until Todd Blanche meets with the Epstein survivors, following up on Dick Durbin's questioning about they're here, why aren't you meeting with them?
Yeah.
And you heard all the tap dancing. Well, I have a sex trafficking expert and I have this and that. No, you need to do it. So you were caught off guard by Tillis. Your staff hadn't tipped you off.
Totally. In such a pleasant way. Like, I think actually
Yeah.
there's like video footage of me, like I was trying not to hide my smile because it was like, oh my God, he sees us. He sees people. We're real people to him. Like, okay, please, like just for the love of all things, just really like look at the story. You can't say that you want to make sure that sex offenders and sex traffickers are behind bars and not and like vote for him, right? Every vote for Blanche is really a vote against survivors, because that is at the core of this. You want to protect survivors, right? And so I was just really relieved to hear that he had said that. But my hope is still that it was not performative and that it really holds some substance, and that this conversation that we had with Blanche did not suffice, and that he can actually have, like, if Tom Tillis wants to call, I'm happy to talk to him. We've been trying to get in touch with.
You heard it here, folks. MeidasTouch. Tom Tillis,
Yeah.
reach out to Dani Bensky. We'll make the connection for
I would
you.
love that. We would love that.
Because what we're referring to is that I think Todd Blanche, in his own depraved way, did you a solid, because because of who he is, because character is revealed in the dark.
Yeah.
He showed his true character. He had a complete unwillingness, did not have generous mind or spirit in meeting with you. It was like a schoolboy being dragged to the principal's office with a stone in his shoe.
Yeah.
Talk about, so it happens that day. Tom Tillis says, I want a meeting, or he's not going to get my vote. And then there's a meeting. So you guys all
also like
talk about
have to remember how chaotic all of this was, right? Because I read somewhere that survivors basically, like, for lack of a better word, like ghosted him for a while. And like, that's not what happened. Literally, like, it was like, okay, so DOJ wants to meet, right? I finished my testimony. I started to walk out the door, and somebody from the DOJ who worked with Todd Blanche, I don't know her name, but she came up to me and said, DOJ wants to meet right now. We're like, great. Okay. We're going to just do this. Let's meet Todd Blanche. They're like, oh no, it's not going to be Todd Blanche. It'll be Ali Serrano. She's on her way here, who's the head of sex crimes. And you're like, that's not what we asked for. And that's not what Tillis said, right? If you want Tillis's vote, it's going to have to be Todd Blanche. I'm sorry. We waited a long, long time for this meeting. And that's just what it has to be. And there was a lot of back and forth. And at that point, like, we were all leaving testimony. People are traveling. People are moving back to their kids. Like, we are not on the Hill full time, right? Yeah. And so in that fray, it was sort of like, okay, he has until 2 p.m. And it was like, I think the time was like 1:15 p.m. at that point. And it was like, okay, so by the time we get there, the meeting's going to be over. Like, we can't assimilate that fast. And so then they came back to us a little bit after, and they said, okay, yeah, he can meet you at 4. But I read that, like, that we stood him up basically. And it was like, we were just walking into a no-win situation every way, shape, and form.
Well, I feel good about our reporting, because I actually reported it without having talked to you. I reported it the way you just said, which is the survivors rejected the offer to meet with somebody not named Todd Blanche until Todd Blanche appeared. Yes. And where was that meeting, Dani?
It was at the DOJ. Yeah,
at the DOJ. Yeah. So you had to hustle over to the DOJ and paint the picture in the room. Who's in the room for the Department of Justice, and who's in the room for the survivors?
So we have basically a room full of staffers. You have Todd Blanche sitting at the helm of the table. You've got, I believe it was, or I should know this, like 6 survivors, and then Virginia's family. And then you've got all of our counsel on the screen. We couldn't get it working, so it was super awkward. I'm not gonna lie. We first got in there, and we were like trying to get on like Teams, and Teams isn't working, and so they had to like call 3 people in. So we're like sitting there like quietly in silence for 15 minutes with Todd Blanche doing nothing.
That's awkward.
Awkward as can be, right? And I mean, when he came in, he was, trying so hard to win us over. I think in the very beginning, he came in, he tried to shake our hand, and many of us were like, I'm not shaking your hand, right? Like, this is we've tried to get in touch with you for the last 9 months, and now you want to walk in here on a high horse and be like, what do you need? But so anyway, so it was, the beginning of it was very sort of shifty feeling. And it, as we sat there and waited for technology to do the things that technology is supposed to do, it felt, you could feel some tension, and you could feel it just sitting and building. And when we finally did start the meeting, I mean, I felt so disoriented after the meeting and during the meeting, because it was like ramming yourself into a brick wall and hoping that there was a door there. Like that was how at every single turn we would basically say, okay, great, let's start talking about the redactions. What happened?
Yeah.
And it would be like, and like, how were they mishandled? I think was the way it was phrased. And he'd be like, I never said that they weren't mishandled. I never said, and it would be about the semantics of language instead of about the actual issue. And so we saw like, okay, we're not going to get anywhere with that question. Okay, why was Ghislaine Maxwell transferred? What was that about?
Why does she have a puppy?
Yeah, I mean, yes, that too. But we asked him why she was transferred, and his response was like, well, people get transferred all the time. Like prisoners get transferred all the time and their victims never know. And it's like, that's just what happens. Okay, next question. Can you get to the point? Like everything was like, can you get the, and then he started.
He literally said, can you get to the point?
I mean, he didn't say get to the point,
No.
but he did say at one point, can you tell me what you're getting at? He said that a few times where it was like, can you just tell me where you're getting at?
Justice for the survivors.
Yeah.
Is what we're getting at.
Yeah. And this is after like we knew that the meeting was only supposed to be half an hour. We ended up having almost an hour. But it was like, I think the people in that room are amazing advocates. The survivors in that room are amazing advocates. We have been in meetings with the Senate and with the House a lot, and we are very good at picking up like, oh, Amanda just said that, so now I'm going to take, if she's talking redactions, I'm going to take the Maxwell transfer.
Right.
So-and-so is going to take the FOIA request. Somebody, and we're able to like pivot around each other. And in this meeting, he was intentionally like sparring with people so that other people would jump in. And then it was like we couldn't get clear, cohesive thought. And that's where the gaslighting came in.
Yeah, he created a scrum.
Yes.
Intentionally.
Yeah. Intentionally.
And I saw some clips of you and the other survivors. Your takeaway was what?
I mean, he was so condescending. My takeaway was that it was a no-win for anybody ever. And that feels awful. I have never felt so low leaving a meeting. And the thing is, it's like, I understand and recognize that this is not about feelings at the end of the day, right? Where I do like to be very facts driven. But if you look at the facts, you're talking 1,200 or over 1,000 survivors, right? That we know of. You're talking 6 million files. You're talking, countless 30 years of information, 5 administrations, all of this stuff. And you have one perpetrator that is dead and one that Todd Blanche, the only one out of all of the things, out of all the people, the only person that Todd Blanche has met with is in a lower security penitentiary playing with puppies, right? So like that, just the numbers say it all. And he has so much to answer for. So we were trying to get any information. And like, it would be this small thing of, so we would say like, okay, so in the 6 million files, and he'd be like 3 million. And we're like, 3 million. We know that there are things that are missing. And he's like, and then he'd be like, but we were running into the wall. So we're like, okay, we're not going to waste our time by arguing 3 or 6, right? That's just not worth it to us.
Right. But this is like when they ask the confirmation candidates, who won the 2020 election. Right? And they won't answer the question. So he has said before that they didn't produce because of duplicativeness and other reasons another half.
There's another Epstein. That's what he gave us at the Senate, at the Judiciary hearing. He gave us, there's another guy named Epstein. You mean to tell me there's another guy named Epstein with 3 million files out there? Like, no way. Like, what are we talking about?
What did you hear when you were part of the 10 or so that were there for his first day of testimony?
Yes. Yeah.
What were the major lies or untruths that you heard?
He has gone back and forth about whether or not the files have been mishandled 100 million different ways, right? Yeah. So that is one of the biggest ones for me, is like that he has said multiple times that the redactions were not mishandled, and then he came back and said that they were, and now he said that he's always said that they were, and he's always survivor first. But the reality of the situation is that he treats us like a thorn in his side. He treats us like, the Epstein problem that needs to go away. He is not looking at the fact that we are part of one of the largest sex trafficking rings in modern day history. That is a problem, right? Like that DOJ needs to put crime victims away, and we are put criminals away, put perpetrators away, and be on the side of crime victims. And
why can't he? I don't understand. I mean, I understand it because he's starting from a bad place. But wouldn't it have been a more effective meeting to say, there's 25 survivors that have come out of 1,400 or so that have come forward. We're going to assign an FBI team to interview and debrief each of the 25.
Yeah.
How about that?
Or have a team in place, right? So we actually asked him, like, Amanda's the best in these situations. And she's like, so have you read the files? He's like, have I read the files? Have I read all 3 million files? No, I have not read all 3 million files. She's like, have you read any? And he's like, well, and we're like, is there a team reading the files? Like, how do you even know, like, that
what's
there are no
them? How do you know what's in them?
Right. Well, and he's been harping on no investigative leads. We've been going for months now to Comer's office, if you name it, every office that you can possibly think of, we are there with all of our little leads.
Start with the draft indictment. How about the draft indictment that had Epstein's assistant in it?
I know. Well, and Leslie Groff has lied over and over again. We can prove that. We've said that to so many people in Congress. And everybody's yelling at us, name the names. But like literally, we've already named everybody in Virginia Giuffre's deposition. We've named Leslie Groff. We've named Richard Kahn and Darren Indyke. And like, we have been naming these names forever. And like, we're like, please pick one person to investigate. We're not even asking for like everybody. We're literally asking you to pick one and show us and that was what I had said. Like, just show us a little good faith. That's all survivors are asking for from this meeting is like, what will you do that will show us an act of good faith? Because we're not trying to be against Todd Blanche. We are trying to find justice, right? It is not us survivors versus Todd Blanche. That's not what's happening here. It is absolutely just a quest for finding truth and transparency. And so it's like, we are happy to work with whoever the AG is, as long as we trust that person. But that person really needs to go to bat for us and make sure that investigative leads are being followed. And like, he said that we had said, Comer's office brought you 2 referrals this week based on Sarah Kellen's testimony. And they were like, well, it wasn't there was no letter. He didn't send a letter. We're like, we don't care how the referral was made. The referral was made. Like, he's
insufferable. He's so insufferable. Well, I mean, this is why he's a perfect complement for his client, Donald Trump. And then so you have that, Dani, and get no relief and get no justice.
Leaving that meeting, like seriously, Michael, leaving that meeting, I had never felt since we've started this, like I do live with PTSD from what happened to me with Jeffrey. Like that is something that I've been diagnosed with. It's been ongoing. So like my body does shake like a lot of the time because the body keeps score and does hold that. But leaving the Todd Blanche meeting, my chest locked up. I was like hyperventilating when I got out of the car. I was about to go to Hallie Jackson and we were about to give an interview there. And I felt like what was it all for today if he was just going to gaslight us to that degree? And it just felt horrible. And it's like, if he is going to treat survivors that way in our country, like our country is made up of how many survivors in the US? I mean, 1 in 3 women, and that statistic is low. So he's not the right fit.
So let me read for you what I pulled out of the 441-page response that Todd Blanche gave to the members of the Judiciary Committee following his testimony. So questions under oath, so to speak. And I look at Grassley, who's a Republican and was the chair of the committee. And he asked him the question as follows. And I want to run it by you. Since you were appointed Deputy Attorney General, have you and other individuals at DOJ met with Epstein victims and or their counsel? He said, yes. Several meetings have occurred between DOJ staff and victims over the last 15 months, including the meeting on July 16th that you just described. Is that true?
So I only know of that one meeting, and we were there for that. We didn't get anything accomplished, and it was like gaslighting palooza. But before that,
several
not a survivor I know had met with him, and like we know a group of like 30 survivors that we talk to regularly. In fact, like I know Annie Farmer had written a letter to Todd Blanche after Ghislaine Maxwell was transferred about, she had testified at his trial. And so she was very deeply concerned that Ghislaine was being moved, and no response whatsoever. And so several meetings really feels like a stretch to me.
Yeah, and then he took your name in vain, which I circled knowing I was going to be interviewing you. He said, since you were appointed as Deputy Attorney General, how many such meetings have taken place? In addition to previous meetings that leadership and officials have had with victims and their counsel, I, Todd Blanche, have met with victims of Jeffrey Epstein or their counsel or both twice. One of them was last week. So there's some other mystery meeting.
Yeah.
Right. And then he says, where Dani Bensky, who testified at my confirmation hearing, somebody must have told him, was present. I remain committed to engaging with victims of Jeffrey Epstein through appropriate legal channels. Do you believe that?
No. No, not at all. And in fact, like when we said, in this idea of good faith, right? And this idea of, in this act of good faith, we're like, will you at least, at the very least, commit to meeting with survivors one-on-one with counsel? And we can point you to the investigative leads. We can talk to you about the redactions that still need to be redacted. We can talk to you about those things. And the response was, no, you have to start with the FBI. You have to start over at the FBI. Like, we can't do anything for you.
So then why did he tell America under oath during his confirmation hearing in response to Dick Durbin's question that, I have my sex trafficking expert here, right here. He didn't say, it's the FBI, it's Kash Patel. I don't know what'll happen. Then he lied.
We see so much of the deflection. He is a masterclass in the art of deflection. I thought that Trump was the masterclass, and actually Todd Blanche, I think, is even more so, because he talks around in circles to the point where you're like, that wasn't even my question. That wasn't what I asked, right? And so he's directing us to the FBI. He's telling us that Allie is like the best, and she knows she's up on the case. And then we find out that Allie Serrano was literally hired like a couple of months ago. Like she's like, where do I start? I have no idea where to start. And we're like, but that's at every turn, right?
Did she reach out to you after he left the room, or they all left the room together?
No, we left before they did, but I think we were so like shell shocked by the whole thing that we were not in a place, I said, I'll do whatever I have to do. If I have to go back to the FBI, I'll do it. But then my question is, are they going to say that statements are like inconsistent because it's been so long? Like there's a lot there that, like there's a reason why we have 302s. We gave the information in the beginning. So I don't know. It's a hard thing to know if they're just trying to jam us up or if this is a real thing. So we'll wait on counsel to see what happens with that. But yeah, I think this thing about, I want to talk about the. Yeah,
you want to go to the FBI video training videos? Okay,
yeah, can we do that?
Yeah, so there's the reporting. Allison Gill, who works with us on Meidas as well, broke the story that there were training videos that the FBI had about how to do the redactions and how to flag documents related to Donald Trump. In fact, we have a clip of Allison saying exactly that. Let's play that clip.
I have some exclusive breaking news. No one has seen this yet. It's regarding the Epstein files. Now, the FBI has admitted that it has in its possession training videos instructing analysts at the FBI on how to redact the Epstein files. They have admitted that they have them. Now, you'll recall multiple anonymous sources who participated in reviewing the Epstein files at the FBI and DOJ confided in me late last summer that in addition to being locked in the building, sometimes for 24 or 48-hour shifts, forced to review hundreds of thousands of pages of Epstein files and videos and photos so that they could log and redact certain information, including Trump's name. And they confided in me that there existed an unclassified SharePoint site where a PowerPoint deck lived, and that PowerPoint deck had training videos embedded in it, instructing them on how to find and log and mark Trump's name and other information for redaction. Training videos, mostly because the IMD, the Information Management Division at the FBI, generally doesn't redact for publication. It's usually a place called RIDS with the FBI, which is a much smaller division. And so in order to get more people to be able to do this, they paid millions of dollars in overtime over 5 days. And they locked the entire Information Management Division in the building, wouldn't let them leave. And that's where we get the number of at least 1,000 people reviewing the Epstein files. because IMD wasn't really trained or certified on how to redact things for publication. So they had to the FBI had to create these training videos. And apparently, some of them specifically told them how to use an Excel spreadsheet to log Trump's name, the page number.
Sounds like we got to do a Freedom of Information Act request to get those videos. What do you think, Dani?
Oh, please. I would love that. Yeah. I think, seeing that, it's such a bombshell, and I feel like we're not really hearing much about that right now. And that's really not just disheartening. It's hugely problematic, because when you hear something like that, how is that legal possible? All of that, right? Where you're literally using taxpayer dollars to hide somebody's name in the files. And then also when we're in this meeting with Todd Blanche and he's saying to us, well, there are, that side of like, you're saying 6 million, but there's actually only 3 million files. And you're like, I'm not even going to argue that. But like, we know that there are more, because we're missing the other half of Maria Farmer's report. We're missing, there are proffer agreements that in the files, if you're actually reading the files, which I highly advise Todd Blanche to, you're seeing so much that should be there that's not. And then to have like the FBI write to Alex Gill and basically say, oh yeah, the training videos, we're not releasing those. And you're like, see, there is more. It's like, it's so validating in some ways, but it's also like, but also, how is this legal?
Right.
It's crazy.
I'm glad we're talking about the training videos, and I know a few people that would love to do the Freedom of Information Act request related to it. Katie Fang, I know you've been on with her as well. In fact, you and I met through Katie, and I just did an interview with her as well, because Judge Sullivan, get ready. Judge Sullivan is about to lower the boom on Todd Blanche. I think contempt charges are coming and a daily fine, because Dani, it took them 7 days to prepare a 2-page response filled with typos, in which they didn't even really respond to any of the 5 categories of documents that the judge gave them a choice. Produce them or translate them if they're the foreign language documents, or tell me in good faith why you can't. They didn't do any of that. And so what do they think Judge Sullivan's going to do in response to a 2-page piece of crap filing?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's what we see. We see a lot of that, right? I mean, we haven't even spoken about like the New Mexico investigation, right? The New Mexico investigation right now, I think that the New Mexico AG reached out 5 times for unredacted documents, and they're obstructing, like full on obstruction of justice is happening, through this case. And so,
yeah, but I think what we're pointing up, and it's so we're so honored to have you as a survivor talk about it. It's one thing for me, and I've been in courtrooms talking about this type of stuff and what I observe in commentary, but to have somebody that's in the room and is the person who is seeking the justice. And should survivors have to work this hard to get justice for the sex abuse crimes that were committed against them when their enemy is our Department of Justice?
Yeah. I mean, we always talk about what this does to the general survivor community. And like, I honestly, if I were watching this happen to another group of survivors as an Epstein survivor, I probably wouldn't want to come forward after all of this, right? Yeah. So it is sending a chilling effect, but I think that that's sort of the goal, unfortunately. If you have a powerful person who has abused you, it is that protection of power versus vulnerability that we always talk about. And it's going to take a lot of people standing up to make sure that that is not the case. But, I'm working on MeidasTouch right now, and we're talking about, there's a line in it all about the dice that gets thrown, like the hand that throws the dice always thinks the toss is fair, right? And that line has really sat with me in the last few weeks, because yeah, it's up to us to really keep beating the drum. And even when you think that people aren't listening, they really are. And we've seen this incredible outpouring. I mean, my inbox is full of survivors reaching out and saying, this horrible thing happened to me, and this is the first time that I can look at it, and I've been re-victimized, by watching, what's been happening, and we have to stop it. We have to end it. And so there are so many amazing people that are doing amazing work, and that is really hopeful. And even within our government, there are, like, on both sides of the aisle, actually, I'm often surprised by some of the meetings we're having with some Republicans in the House, especially, where it's not all for naught. But it does feel like those at the top can feel, it feels like the DOJ is just working completely independently from the rest of our government. And that is really terrifying.
That's what happens when you a president brings in his private criminal defense team to be the top leadership in the Department of Justice. Sorry.
I have to say, he said it in the meeting. Like, I cannot believe that he had that slip of the tongue in the hearing when he said, "I'm his lawyer. I'm Trump's lawyer." Oh wait, no, I was his lawyer. And we're like, that's literally all you have to say. That you just see the whole hearing wrapped up.
That was supposed to be a softball from Senator Kennedy. Are you friends with Donald Trump? Well, I'm his lawyer. I was his lawyer.
Just to feel that in the room was hilarious. I mean, even I don't know who this guy was sitting next to me, but he was like, Freudian slip much, It's like everybody felt it in the room. Everybody was like, "Yep, Ben, there it is. He said it." We don't even have to have the rest of this hearing because he absolutely is protecting reputational harm, his own and the president's, over the interests of the American people, and that is so deeply disturbing for somebody that sits in the highest position of law enforcement in our country, and we can't let it happen.
Dani Bensky, I don't want to call you Epstein survivor because that does not define you. You're so courageous. Your leadership among survivors is so important to our nation. And when I know it was difficult for you to step forward for the reasons that we've discussed on this interview and give the testimony that you gave to the Senate, but it is making a difference. It's certainly making a difference to our audience. We're so pleased to have you here with us.
Thank you so much, Michael, for everything. And again, you've gotten the full tour of where I am. So thank you. Thank you for bearing with me today.
Thanks for being here. You're on MeidasTouch Network and Legal AF with Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.